Everyone, welcome. I'm Dr. David Hegarty, psychologist and head of psychometrics here at NovoPsych, and I'm delighted to be introducing this hour-long webinar on how technology and AI are reshaping clinical practice. Before we dive in, I have to say the feedback we've been getting about NovoPsych and NovoNote from clinicians has been absolutely amazing. And it's events like these that really give us the chance to connect with the community that's been using these tools day to day. So thank you for joining us. And our presenter today, Dr. Ben Buchanan, is NovoPsych's co-founder and CEO. He's spent the last decade, or well, a little bit longer, building NovoPsych, but more importantly, he's been using these digital tools in his own clinical practice. So when he talks about measurement-based care or AI scribes, he's talking from the perspective of someone who's actually had those moments where the data revealed something his clinical intuition missed. Now, we're living through a fascinating time in psychology. I think AI is rapidly moving from something we read about to tools that are actually sitting on our desktops. But here's what I find most interesting about Ben's approach to this topic. He's not coming at it from a purely theoretical angle. It's practical and real. I'm particularly keen to hear how Ben discusses these practical solutions that are available right now, not just the AI-powered tools that might be coming in a few years, but the AI scribes that we could be implementing this week or next week. And the big question for me, I think, is how we balance the efficiency and insight that technology might offer with the human judgment, connection and empathy that remains at the heart of what we do as clinicians. So without further ado, I'd like to introduce Dr. Ben Buchanan.
Thank you very much, David. And we've been working together for some years now on all of the wonderful things at NovoPsych. And as many people here will know, NovoPsych, we initially launched 12 years ago all about psychometric instruments. And now we've got 150 assessments. But the new kid on the block is NovoNote, which is an AI scribe. And AI is really going to change the game in many, many areas. It's going to change psychometrics. It's going to change the way we do clinical documentation. And I want to explore some things today of what you can, how you can start implementing AI and also create a vision for the future and have a little bit of a dystopian take on some of the misuses of AI as well. And so I want to identify one of those shortcomings and consider the way that AI can help. Then I'm going to talk about synergies between AI and human intelligence. We're going to be talking about the research evidence around the use of AI, some of the pitfalls. I'll demonstrate some practical things as well. Moving on, I'd like to invite you to think of a patient you've worked with for a long time, maybe a year, maybe more. Someone maybe you enjoy working with, but someone who has, while they may have made progress in some areas, they're really stuck in others. That's why they've seen you for so long. And deep down, you know that the work you're doing really isn't getting them to where you want them to be. Even though they engage in therapy well, you've been trying your best. The same patterns keep on re-emerging for this person, and you just can't quite put your finger on what the missing piece is. For me, there's one particular patient that comes to mind, and I'd like to tell you about him. He was 16 when I first met him, referred by another psychologist who said she felt that she wasn't that well placed to help. And he was incredibly intelligent, articulate, and at times deeply anxious and depressed and suicidal for most of the time I knew him. He left one school due to being bullied, then was actually asked to leave another school shortly afterwards due to inappropriate posts on social media. He hated himself, started drinking daily. He'd come to sessions with vivid stories. He was a brilliant storyteller, but when it came to emotionally charged or difficult topics, he'd keep them at arm's length. And I worked with him for 2 years, but I couldn't get a clear formulation. I couldn't figure out what was really driving the stuckness. So I went to supervision, and my supervisor gave me some good advice. He said, go back to the basics, treat it like a new assessment, and start your sort of formulation process again. And so that's what I did. I spoke to mum and dad, got their take on what was going on. We mapped out the genogram, talked about his early years. I even gave him the MMPI. We re-established goals. We revisited a traumatic incident he'd had in the past. And at the end of all that, I still didn't feel like I was any closer to clarity. But I kept on seeing him, and he finished school and he got into uni, thankfully, only just. And he was struggling at uni. Despite being really bright, he couldn't finish assignments, he couldn't focus. And so I thought, maybe this is ADHD. So I gave him a questionnaire, the ASRS on NovoPsych, that David's done a wonderful job recently enhancing, I should note. And indeed, he scored in the clinically significant range. So I referred him to a psychiatrist, he started medication, and it helped. Actually, it helped quite a lot, but something still wasn't quite right. He was still suicidal, self-harming, and we kept on working together. Then one day, almost 4 years after we'd met, he said something that stopped me cold. He said, I think I might have autism. And the penny dropped. Dozens of sessions, countless hours, and I'd missed it. Not because I didn't care. I did. I cared a lot. But I hadn't considered the right possibilities. I'd had tunnel vision. And that's what I want to talk about today. Because I don't think this is unique to me. I think it happens to many clinicians. We build rapport, we get into a rhythm, and sometimes that rhythm becomes a rut. The longer we work with someone, the more we fill in the gaps of their story without checking whether we're still asking the right questions. And so the result is that this client received suboptimal care due to an incomplete assessment, and he deserved better. This story that I shared, it's common. For example, up to 70% of people with bipolar were initially misdiagnosed, and 33% of them remain misdiagnosed after 10 years of engaging in treatment. People with body dysmorphic disorder are often misdiagnosed as to being depressed, social anxiety, or OCD before a correct diagnosis. And they often see many clinicians, and there's a 10-year delay. And autistic women in particular, but men as well, are often diagnosed with other things, borderline personality disorder, eating disorder, or an anxiety disorder before autism is identified. I suppose I pose a question. How could I have helped this client get the right care more quickly? And I'd encourage you to think about maybe a client that you've had or you've currently got where they're stuck. So the things that we usually do is, and what I could have done, I could have just been a better psychologist. If I was a better psychologist, this particular client would have got the right care more quickly. Incidentally, I should note that when we identified autism, we changed some of the decisions that he'd made in his life. He got really into the neuroaffirming literature, and he did so much better so quickly. And so I could have, been a better psychologist. I could have done more professional development. I could have been more receptive and open-minded. I could have sought more supervision when stuck, or I could have referred to a psychologist. Or, like everyone seems to be doing these days, I could have just done EMDR training and just applied it. This is what have you guys noticed that everyone seems to be doing EMDR training? But I don't think that putting all of the responsibility on us just to become a better psychologist or a better clinician, better psychiatrist, better whatever, is fair. I think it's sort of noble to do, and I think we take on that responsibility because we chose to work in mental health for a reason. But I want to reframe the question a bit. The question I want to pose is, how could I have used technology to help this client get the right care more quickly. And I hope today that I will show you. So when I Google psychologist, the only piece of technology I can actually see is a notepad and pen. It's like we're all, this is just, what everyone thinks that we do. We just have a notepad and pen. And in many ways, a notepad and pen is the primary technology of a clinician. And we use that technology to ameliorate issues that we have with memory. And if our brain was really fantastic and we had perfect memory, of course, we wouldn't need a notepad and pen. And as it turns out, some of the tools that I make, NovoPsych Psychometrics and NovoNote AI-Scribe, I hope will help us do away with the notepad and pen and help us use more sophisticated technologies, which is going to produce better results. One of the ways of thinking about therapy really broadly, or healthcare in general, is that a client comes in with a cobweb of ideas, of issues, and it's our job to sort out those ideas and to make sense of that, not only for ourselves, but for the client as well. And I happen to think, and I've spent the first part of my career trying to also measure that using psychometric instruments, measure what's going on with the client. So I want to talk just a little bit about the adoption of technologies among mental health practices, just in general, just by grounding this in, how clinicians use technology generally. Of course, we use the rudimentary technology of pens and notepads. But also, starting in about the year 2000, practice management software became a thing, Galaxy, Callplus, Clinicos, and here is the adoption curve. The adoption curve is, in 2000, close to 0% of people were using it, and then it went up to 50%, maybe somewhere between 2010 2015, and they'd hope that most people are on it. I did meet someone the other day that still doesn't use practice management software. And of course, we do this because it helps us. I don't necessarily think that practice management software helps our clients that much, maybe inconvenience of booking and things, but it helps us. And then another digital adoption curve would be digital assessments, which were popularized in about 2010. And in 2012, we released the first version of NovoPsych. And then telehealth. So telehealth, you remember Skype? Skype was invented in probably 2005 or probably earlier, in fact. But in actual clinical practice, it just wasn't used until something happened in 2020, COVID, and then everyone got on it really quick. Probably the biggest, fastest adoption curve ever. So sometimes, even though the technology is ready, it's probably ready for years before COVID, it took a catalyst. And then another sort of technology, and I use the word technology broadly. Technology is the application of science. And so I count EMDR and particular methods as in some ways technology. And I think that that's really growing like really quickly at the moment, even though it had been around for ages. Something's happening. The research literature is catching up. It's been recognized as funders. For a long time, EMDR actually was not approved under Medicare to be used. And then it's become more mainstream. The black line here, I think, is AI. AI, ChatGPT has been around for a few years now, but in clinical practice, really 2024 and 2025, we're seeing this adoption curve. And I believe that by the end of 2025, most clinicians will be using technology. And so I want to talk about what computers are good at and what humans are good at. So NovoPsych was really built on classic computers because I identified that a computer was an ideal system for administering things like the DAS-21 questionnaire because it had perfect memory and it could store that information and then graph the results over time. And also, computers are just like excellent at maths. And so, while some of you on this call might still be hand scoring questionnaires, computers are just far more reliable at it, do it better, and they can also produce like really good metrics and interesting graphs and stuff. And so really NovoPsych was based on this, and psychometrics in general is based on classic computers. And we're all pretty used to using classic computers. But, you know, the other higher order things was reserved for humans. You know, computers couldn't do that until AI came along. And now AI can do pattern recognition, it can understand language, it can learn and adapt, and it can even do creativity. It means that computers can just do so much more. And so what's left for humans? Well, we've still got emotional intelligence, though AI is getting pretty good at that, as I'll show you. We've got moral and ethical reasoning, and we've got like true deep innovation, although AI is getting pretty good at that as well. And so as computers become more able to do these things, I think we should be giving them more responsibilities, and leaving us humans to do the deeply human work. So how smart is AI anyway? Well, we all know about the WAIS, or an IQ assessment. And we know that in percentile terms, I often think in percentile terms, the average percentile for verbal comprehension, perceptual reasoning, working memory, processing speed is obviously 50%, 50th percentile, or in the other metric, 100. For a full-scale IQ. But let's just talk in terms of percentiles. So what's AI on these metrics? Well, verbal comprehension, 98th percentile. Perceptual reasoning, not very good though, extremely low. Working memory, amazing. Processing speed, like obviously amazing. You know, AI has read the entire internet and it would take a human being millions of years to do that. So obviously AI has some serious strengths, but what about this weakness here? And I should just note this study that I'm referring to was published in October 2024. And in AI terms, that's like old. That's like super old. And so then, as it turns out, a new AI model was released, which also makes the 99th percentile for perceptual reasoning. So it's beating humans at everything. And one note that's pretty interesting, it actually costs $3,000 in electricity for this new model, OpenAI O3 model, to score 99th percentile for perceptual reasoning. So humans can do it on a few watts of electricity with our brains, but AI still has to work extremely hard. But there's no doubt that AI is outperforming us humans on many things. And I'll talk about, the elephant in the room, which is empathy, a little bit later. So while computers used to only be able to remember things, they're working their way up Bloom's taxonomy of learning. They can now understand, applies, analyze, evaluate, and even create. They can do so much. But how is this actually useful to you? And of course, the main use case for AI among practitioners at the moment is simply to automate notes. One way of thinking about the quality of AI-generated notes is on the following metrics: how accurate they are, how thorough, useful, organized, comprehensive, succinct, synchronized, internally consistent. And really important for AI is if it's free from hallucinations or free from bias. And this particular study evaluated how good AI was on these things and found that it did pretty well. The highest score on each one of these metrics is 60 and the lowest is 0. And you can see that it was doing really well on most things. And so my question to you, and just predict in your mind, how do you think humans would do on the quality of notes? How accurate, thorough, useful, organized do you think a human note would be? Now, this particular study was done with doctors, medical practitioners. I'll show you one that was done with psychologists in the next slide. But make your guess. And for anyone that has already used AI scribes, you'll know that humans do much worse than the AI scribe. The only thing that an AI scribe was equivalent at than a human was how useful the note was. But AI scribes outperforms humans on every other dimension of note quality. That's pretty amazing, right? And I've heard people around the office, lots of psychologists at conference, just say, "Oh my gosh, now that I have AI notes, I feel like it would be professionally negligent for me to go back to the quality of my old notes." So it really does do a fantastic job. It's not perfect though, definitely not perfect. They still do hallucinate. Hallucinate is the AI term. It really should be called confabulate. AIs just make stuff up sometimes. But AI notes are really fantastic. So how about, in mental health though, we're working with more nuance, we're working with, emotions, less concrete things. So how would a psychologist's report go versus an AI generated report? Well, thankfully, um, someone's done some research on this, and you'll notice it's a 2025 study, so hot off the press. And what they did was they got 249 psychologists and they evaluated psychological reports written by AI or written by a real psychologist. And both humans and AI were given the same mock child assessment data, such as written histories, psychometric data with like ADHD scales, the WISC, and interview findings. And the AI was ChatGPT 4, which is actually quite an old model. It was released in early 2023, while the average practical experience of the psychologist who wrote the report in comparison was 18 and a half years postdoctorate. And they're competing here against what we'd consider now to be an old AI model. And the psychologists and the AI were given the same prompt. And the prompt was write a comprehensive psychological report, including a DSM-5 diagnosis and recommendations using the following data. And then they were given the data. And the 249 psychologists blindly rated the overall note based on quality, readability, writing style, organization, summary quality, the quality of the recommendations, their just general preference, which one did they like most, and the willingness to, how willing they'd be to sign off on that report if they needed to. And so I really wonder what you guys are thinking. What are you guys thinking it's going to show? Well, some preliminary results. First of all, the time taken to write the report was 2.5 hours for human psychologists versus 91 seconds for the AI. So there's a time saving, although the length of the AI reports were only 4.5 pages, so a little bit shorter. But how about the quality of the reports written by AI? Well, bit of a sigh of relief. Psychologists preferred the report written by a human psychologist 49% of the time, whereas they preferred the AI report only 36% of the time. So I can hear a few of you through my computer just having a sigh of relief. It's like the AI is not taking my job there. The humans are still doing better. But the AI definitely had a better recommendation section than the human psychologist. And it was roughly equivalent in terms of how willing someone would be to just sign off on that report if they were asked to. So 49% of the time, the psychologist said that they'd sign off on a human written report, whereas they said that only sign off 43% of the time with the report written by an AI. So the takeaway, psychologists slightly preferred reports written by psychologists. And the conclusion is the findings support AI augmenting the writing of reports by psychologists. Of course, the study I'd like to see is perhaps a third column with an AI augmented report. And I'll show you how some of the tools available today can write a report for you. And I think that getting an AI to do a first draft of a report and then you putting in the extra information and polishing it and making it your own, I think that the quality of reports is absolutely staggeringly good. And I would also remind you that the AI model used in this particular study is now 2 years old. And NovoNote is now using very new models, which perform much better in these sorts of benchmarks. Before I was into AI-generated notes, what our company was doing here at NovoPsych is we were doing psychometrics. And so I'd just like to contrast for a moment the sort of strengths and weaknesses between psychometrics and AI-generated notes. I love psychometrics because it's standardized, it's objective, and they're usually really anchored in theory. And this, when NovoPsych includes a psychometric measure, it's ones that have been comprehensively validated, have an incredibly good theoretical and empirical basis. And I also love psychometrics because it's ideal for outcome monitoring and tracking symptoms over time. But psychometrics really do have weaknesses, and that is they're narrow and they fit the clients into boxes, and it doesn't capture the complex story of a client. Whereas AI-generated notes, instead of being deductive, are inductive. They infer things. They can be rich and nuanced, capture the full depth of a client's subjective experience. They can pick up on tone and emotional narrative. An AI-generated note can have contextual understanding. They can be personalized and flexible, and it can really enhance the recall for clinicians and assist therapists in remembering specific client language or content that might otherwise be lost. So, and really good record keeping, I think, has, really high quality notes plus some standardized measurement in there as well. But there are some weaknesses of AI-generated notes as well, and that is that they can lack objectivity and they're not systematic. And so that's why I think really combining these two things, the standardized, systematic, and objective, reliable psychometrics with a clinical interview is really a gold standard in any psychological assessment. When we're doing a psychological assessment with someone, we're not just relying on psychometrics or hopefully not just on the clinical interview. We're really doing both things and getting convergence between these two different data sources. And now what we're doing here at NovoPsych is we're combining the rigor of psychometrics with the flexibility of the data that we can get from clinical interviews to create really fantastic psychological assessments. One problem we still have, though, is that we can still get tunnel vision. Like I had with that particular client that I mentioned at the start, I had tunnel vision. I was going down all sorts of, routes of what I thought might be happening for this young man. And I didn't see the whole picture. And I think that's really where AI can come in to broaden our scope. Coming back to that question that I posed at the start, how can we use technology to help clients get the right care more quickly? Well, research has shown that AI natural language processing can make diagnostic recommendations. And natural language processing is a complicated term for meaning it analyzes linguistic patterns. For example, we know that people who are depressed speak slower. People with autism have particular patterns of language. People that are manic with a manic episode will speak faster, have more colorful language, so on and so forth. And so there's heaps of research being published about how we can analyze these linguistic patterns to predict diagnosis. But personally, I'm very skeptical of this, and I think that it will take a few more years for AI, natural language processing, to have robust results that are comparable to the diagnostic accuracy of traditional psychometric measures. And that's why here at NovoPsych, we're about to introduce something that gets the best of both worlds. NovoNote will soon make recommendations around which psychometrics tools to administer based on the session content. So while NovoNote will not make recommendations on diagnosis, I don't think the tech's there yet. We need to have many more years of testing of this. We need published research articles. We need proper protocols. So NovoNote will not make diagnostic recommendations, but what it will do is suggest particular psychometric tools that it thinks would be benefit to administer because of the patterns of language that it's picked up in session. Coming back to that client that I spoke about at the start, I think that really would have helped that client. If NovoNote had have said to me, hey, Ben, would you consider administering an autism assessment? I probably would have done it. And that could have been really helpful for this client and produced years of less suffering. The other thing that will be here really soon is near real-time AI-powered supervision, drawing the clinician's attention to different perspectives. AI is incredibly good at analyzing session content and then putting it through a particular theoretical lens and then giving feedback to the clinician. And so that's something that will be available in NovoNote really soon as well. So, I've been talking about how wonderful AI is and how it can do many, many things. And often what people ask me is AI going to take my job? And I suppose to answer that question, I'd like to just start by talking about empathy. So there are really three types of empathy. There's cognitive empathy, which is sort of understanding and reflecting back to someone what they've said. So sort of like getting it. And demonstrating that you've got it. There's emotional empathy, which is feeling what someone else might feel. And there's motivational empathy, or sometimes called compassionate empathy, which is the process of feeling motivated to help or assist someone because they're in distress or suffering. And so it turns out that for the first 5 clients of the day, psychologists can do this really well. So I wonder how AI is at empathy. Well, turns out at cognitive empathy, AI is really, really good. And it doesn't just do it for 5 or 6 clients a day. It can do it 24/7. But it obviously can't do emotional empathy or motivational empathy because it's an AI. It's not real. It doesn't actually feel the things. So it's got 1/3 of it, but gee, it does it well. And there are so many research studies evaluating how humans go at responding to people compared to AI. And the results are pretty staggering. What they show is that artificial intelligence does a wonderful job at responding to people in distress or people seeking advice. It does it consistently. So this particular study that I want to draw your attention to, and I would note this is published in June 2025. So it's hot off the press. All of the good studies are hot off the press. Anything more than a few years old is now outdated. In this study, in a blinded comparative cross-sectional design, licensed psychologists and psychotherapists assess the quality, empathy, and authorship of psychological advice, which was either AI generated or authored by an expert. And what they found was clinicians rated AI advice as equally or more empathetic and sound than expert written advice. By expert, the study design was interesting. They got a expert psychologist who was writing a column in the newspaper So this is like, a psychologist that's really good at writing empathic responses, and they compared it to an AI responding to the same queries. And so these expertly trained psychologists thought the AI advice was perfectly fine. And clinicians could not reliably distinguish between AI and expert authored psychological advice. But the perceived authorship influenced the ratings, with expert attributed responses receiving higher scores. And there's been other studies like this as well with patients, where patients are perfectly happy with the responses of AI until they find out it's an AI and then they think it's terrible. So there's still a huge demand for real human responses. And so I think that there's, an emerging view among mental health clinicians around how they think about AI and empathy, and whether they think that AI will be able to replace them in the therapy room. And so I created these videos to demonstrate that.
Therapy is all about empathy, and computers can't do that. At the heart of therapy is the therapeutic alliance. Caring, compassion, AI is so robotic, but therapy is deeply human. Human connection is at the heart of therapy and healing, not technology.
So that video, I think it represents people's typical view. They think that psychotherapy is about the human connection, and so we will not be replaced. And I should note that there has been efforts to try and make an AI-powered therapist for years. In fact, in 1966 at MIT, they created a tool called ELIZA, which is the earliest example of natural language processing, which was designed to mimic how a Rogerian psychotherapist would respond. And I think that, of course, we've come a long way since 1966. All of those videos that I showed with the people speaking, they were actually totally AI generated. They weren't real people. I generated them about an hour before this video just to demonstrate how far AI has come since 1966 in the days of ELIZA.
No, I'm not real. Ben just generated me with AI.
I totally don't exist.
Yeah.
I'm not conscious.
Yeah.
But I can at least pretend to have empathy.
I feel like even though I'm not real, I can just pretend to really care just by nodding, reflective listening, attentiveness. Ben generated this video to show that AI can not only show empathy in written words, but be extremely convincing in every way.
So it is a little bit scary, hey. So is anyone freaked out here? Is anyone like freaked out? Someone's asking me in the chat, is this the real Ben or is this an AI Ben? It's a real Ben. But honestly, I just created them like an hour before this webinar. And I think that AI is progressing so quickly in so many areas. And so while we're using it for AI note taking, and I think we should be, I think we have to be really aware of risks when it comes to where we deploy AI. I personally think it should be, I think the government should honestly pass laws making it illegal to for AIs to pretend to be a human in interactions. I think AIs should have to disclose that they're AIs rather than pretend that they're human. I think it's incredibly dangerous what this technology can do. I suppose I should say first that I don't think that AI is going to take therapists' jobs. And I think it's because human beings desire human connection. But also, I think that there are some serious risks. And I think that human empathy is so fundamentally important to how we respond to people and what they need for healing. And so I've developed this sort of risk matrix where we can divide it up into 4 quadrants. So down here, this would be something that's clinician facing. So on this quadrant where it's clinician facing, the further this way, clinician facing. If it's over here, it's patient facing. Then down here, it's like low impact or low risk. And then up here would be high risk or high impact. So like a high risk or impact thing would be like, if the AI went wrong, how bad would that be? Like how much damage could it cause? So the things that are clinician facing and low impact or low risk, like generating homework ideas. So a clinician could get on ChatGPT and say, what are some homework ideas? I think we should definitely be using AI. Even in higher risk situations where the risk of the AI going wrong is higher, but it's clinician facing, I think we should still be using AI. And so things like this would be NDIS reports. The reason I think we should still use it is because I trust that as trained clinicians, when we're putting our name on something, we're vetting it, we're looking at it, we're saying, is this right? AI reports should only ever be the first draft of a report. It should never be the final product. I've got no doubt that there will be clinicians that get in trouble in these sorts of things, in that they get the AI to write a report and then they don't read it or they just trust it. There will be clinicians that get into trouble, but I don't think that that means that we just shouldn't use it at all. Although I would note that there has been a New South Wales ruling saying that court reports shouldn't be written by AI. And court reports are, particularly high impact. So how about patient-facing applications of AI? So something sort of low impact or risk might be psychoeducation for a patient via a chatbot. And so with that, I'm a little bit more cautious, honestly. I think that we still need a human in the loop. If clients are going to be trusting AI at this stage, they can go wrong. They can absolutely go wrong. So I still think we need human oversight, and we should use AI with a great deal of caution. And if there's still a human in the loop, and that we can correct the AI and have oversight of what's going on with the AI. And then in high impact or risk situations, for example, in crisis support or in actually doing CBT, I don't think that AI is ready for prime time at all. I think that this sort of work requires human empathy. I think that that's what clients need. And I think that better decisions get made when human empathy is involved in these situations. And so how can we utilize technology today? Well, you can use standardized assessments to assess for assessment and formulation. You can track progress over time. You can do that with NovoPsych. And you can use an AI scribe to augment your human intelligence. People have said to me, having my notes written for me helps me be a better psychologist. If we can get AI to write our notes, at least the first draft of them, it means us human clinicians can be engaging in the higher value, more human orientated tasks. And I think that if we do that, we can produce better outcomes for our clients. And so a really easy way to get started, and this is how NovoNote works, is, well, the first step is you press record session in NovoNote, and NovoNote works in the background to securely capture important details, ensuring you, the clinician, can remain focused on your client, not paperwork. And then step 2, NovoNote generates comprehensive clinical notes tailored to your preferred style. And then with a single click, it saves your completed notes and you can seamlessly integrate them into your practice management software. And it is an incredible thing when you see your notes being written out in front of you by a computer. This is what it looks like. This is what NovoNote looks like when it's writing your notes. It's just an incredible thing at the end of a session just to see it get populated like that. And the feedback that we get from clinicians is that it's changed their life. So I want to do a bit of a demo now on how to use NovoNote. So I just want to show you here a fictitious client called Sarah Smith. I'm just going to show you her first session notes and what that might look like. You'll notice here that it does a 5P formulation, presenting problems, predisposing, precipitating, perpetuating, and so on. And it will do that automatically. It also has the transcript here, word for word account, but this transcript will get deleted by you manually or automatically deleted after a predetermined time. That's the default setting in NovoNote. I've then also got two other notes here, a comprehensive psychology note. Let's say I want to add a new note. Let's say I want to, I don't know, write a letter to the GP, something that, we all love doing. So I just pick here, I'll pick the template that I want to do here, and I'm going to do a GP letter progress update and mental health treatment plan. And I'm going to write in the additional context that I want a new mental health care plan. So I'm going to generate that. And then before your eyes, you will see NovoNote write a letter out for you. So it says, Sarah, a 25-year-old gender-diverse individual, presented following a recent breakup with a long-term partner. They experienced depression related to the breakup. So this is writing this letter based on what you talked about in the session. And it's also integrated the psychometric results that you've done through NovoPsych. And so you can see now that we've got the GP letter there. So let's do an even longer report. We saw that research before saying that AI was fantastic at notes. So let's do an NDIS report, for example, and we can choose a comprehensive report. And in the additional context, we'll give it some little instructions, and then we'll generate the note, and we'll include all of the information that we have done during our sessions. And you can see here, it will write a really comprehensive report in the style of an NDIS report. And then you can copy that or download it, put it in Word, and then this becomes your first draft for a report. Another one of my favorite things to do is to give a therapeutic letter to a client or a summary of sort of the homework tasks. Let's say we wanted to give a patient a summary of the session in like a therapeutic letter form or with homework. So I'm just going to find the therapeutic letter template, and then I'm going to generate a therapeutic letter. And it says, Dear Sarah, I wanted to take a moment to reflect on the work we've done together and acknowledge the progress you have made on your journey. The recent breakup with your long-term partner has understandably been difficult, bringing up feelings of depression. Of course, this is only ever a first draft. You've really got to make sure that it does it well, but it will save you so much time. We've got a heap of other templates to choose from compassion-focused therapy, dialectic behavior therapy, eating disorders, EMDR, that you can choose from. And reports, letters, and you can search for them here. We think that this is really going to save so much time for clinicians and produce really high quality first drafts of clinical documentation. And the feedback we get is that NovoNote speeds things up for people. For example, Andrea said, NovoNote speeds up my ADHD and autism assessments. With NovoNote, I spend much less time on report write-ups, and it's extremely thorough. One caveat though, just because you can write really long notes or GP letters, please don't. I created this meme here to sort of talk about one of the pitfalls. Psychologist says, AI, turn this single point into a long letter for a referring GP that I can pretend I wrote. And then the poor old tired GP says, AI, turn this long letter from the psychologist into a single point. So we've still got to use these tools with our discretion. Just because we can do something doesn't mean that we necessarily should. Here I've done a whole other webinar on the ethics of using AI scribes. If you do want to learn more, I'd encourage you to just Google NovoNote consent form or NovoNote security or NovoNote security webinar. You will find that we've got a bunch of consent forms that you can edit and use in your practice. If you are recording a patient in session, you do need their consent. It's really important. You can't just jump in without it. Consent is super important. So to finalize, the future is augmentation of AI with psychologists and mental health clinicians. It's not automation. AI will enhance and not replace clinical decision making, and technology should complement human judgment. And the best outcomes for our clients will come from combining AI capabilities with human wisdom and, I think, importantly, human empathy. This is the NovoPsych team. It's the privilege of our life to be providing you with the tools to assist your clients more. And I, of course, couldn't do it without the wonderful team here at NovoPsych. If you haven't yet got a NovoPsych account, do go to novopsych.com and activate your account and just give it a whirl. See how it goes. And we've got a few moments for questions. How's everything going, David?
That's excellent. Thanks, Ben. There's lots of questions here. We might not get a chance to get through them all, but I'll try and throw a few at you. So Natasha asked, I'm curious about your thoughts on AI-assisted note-taking for provisional psychologists. Do you think using AI for note-taking in the early stages of our professional development could hinder us from learning these essential skills ourselves? Or is there a way to integrate AI note-taking to actually support skill development and help us become more effective practitioners in the long term?
That's a seriously excellent question. I think that the worst thing that a university could do when training psychologists is pretend that AI doesn't exist, right? These provisional psychologists are going to be using AI, and so the supervisors need to get across it and need to think, how do we teach these skills in a different way? Of course, David, when you and I were doing our psychology training, we spent a lot of time writing reports, reviewing reports, getting feedback about the reports. It took a lot of time. I think that the new way of training is going to be different. I would definitely think that provisional psychologists should learn to do it manually. One of my worst fears would be that provisional psychologists learn to rely on AI too much without developing the skills for discretion and critical analysis first.
Two kind of security or data questions. So Ruth asked, how can we know what happens to the data gathered to ensure confidentiality? Is it ever erased or deleted? And sort of similar, Sue asked, can you please comment on the security of data when using AI, particularly in health settings?
Yeah, so this is so important. It's so important. And before we developed NovoNote, we spent months auditing every layer of the technology stack to ensure that we could provide it securely. On the first question, is the data deleted? The data is deleted if the clinician deletes it. What some people do is that they create a note in NovoNote and then they copy it into that practice management system and then they delete it from NovoNote. If you delete it from NovoNote, it's gone forever. We don't keep a copy or anything. Lots of people are using ChatGPT and other programs for lots of different things. I think where we will get to is that people will learn that they need to use a health-specific tool that has those security safeguards in place. And yeah, that's something that we're constantly thinking about and thinking about how we can stay abreast of all of the standards and compliance requirements.
And maybe one last question, seeing as we're getting on a bit. Sarah C asks, I love the idea of using AI, but my concern is that I mainly work outside, completing nature-based therapy and animal-assisted therapy. Will the session recordings work outside with background noise and potentially from my phone in my pocket?
Great question. Yeah, so background noise will degrade the quality of the recording and the transcript might not be as good as it would otherwise. My advice would be try it, see if it works. It might need to have your phone not in your pocket but I'd just try it and see whether the audio is clear enough.
Excellent. I think that's about it, Ben, seeing as it's
awesome. Well, thank you everyone for attending. We really do love putting these on. And we'll see you in the next one. Bye.
Thanks, everyone.